Hey everyone, Pastor BJ here, coming to you from Kirkmont Church. So this week we're going to jump into the State of Theology survey results again. And this week we're going to take a look at two particular questions that I think really highlight some of the places where evangelicals need to grow. Some of the places where we as evangelical pastors and leaders have potentially not done a good enough job in educating our folks. And so, all right, let's take a look at our first question here. The first question we're going to look at is Statement 3. And it says this: true or false? God accepts the worship of all religions, including Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. All right, so this is what a lot of the commentators have been seeing as a little bit of a sore spot. And I want to start by highlighting one positive thing from this. The biggest positive takeaway from this question is that the evangelical view of the world and the folks that hold that belief are way out of step with the wider American culture. Let me show you what I mean. U.S. adults, according to this survey, agree with this statement 63% of the time. Whereas evangelicals, we disagree with this statement 68% of the time. All right. Now, it's obvious for those who know their scriptures that this statement is a false statement. God does not accept the worship of all religions, and it must be done in the name of Christ, according to the scriptures. And so it's really kind of heartening to see the American culture is drifting one way and the evangelical culture is kind of resisting that shift. And so that's really the sort of the positive takeaway from this. The negative takeaway from this is that we still have 25% of our folks who agree with a statement that is flatly unbiblical. It's actually quite illogical to think this way. And so this has kind of unsettled us to some degree. And so I just want to walk through this statement to begin with about why this is happening. All right, so the first reason that I think we have 25% of evangelicals who are making claims and holding to truths that are not biblical is because they're being influenced by postmodern thought. Postmodernism is really just sort of a philosophical view that sees truth as relative to the people that hold them. So historically, people understood truth to be something that is objective, that is outside of the human mind, and it's the human mind that is the tool by which we seek that objective truth. And those of us who are Christians, we hold to what's called a revelational epistemology. And that's just a fancy word that means we can only know things that are true if they are revealed to us from the one who has the truth. Postmodernism, contrary to that, teaches that the human mind is the final arbiter of truth. And when you look at the fact that there are billions of people on Earth and none of us have all the information, postmodernism kind of goes, well, Jews are going at it from this angle, and Muslims are coming at it from this angle, and Christians from this angle, and Hindus and Buddhists and all across the world. And so, in a sense, we're all kind of climbing the mountain to try to find the higher truth. And that's backwards biblically. And if you're interested in this, Pastor Dan did an incredible sermon last week. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend you go and watch it this week. He addresses this question very, very well. But I think there's another aspect to this that has caused the evangelical numbers to tick up a little bit, and that's the inclusion of Judaism in this question. If you go and talk to most evangelical Christians and ask them, does God accept the worship of Muslims? Almost all of them will universally say no. And it's because we understand that the basic foundational level of Islam is incompatible with Christianity. The basic creed of Islam is what's known as the Shahada. La ilaha illa Allah, Muhammadan Rasulullah, which simply means there is only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. And the Shahada is the statement that all Muslims have to make in order to become a Muslim. It's sort of their declaration of faith, or their public declaration of what they believe. And right-thinking Christians understand that to be incompatible with the scriptural truths. We have the Shema prayer in the Old Testament. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God, the Lord alone. There's only one God, and it's Yahweh, not Allah. And so typically, most evangelicals aren't confused by that. But if you include Judaism in there, it makes us think a little bit differently, right? Does God accept Jews and their worship? Now, part of the reason that this is the case is because there is an affinity between Judaism and the nation of Israel and a lot of evangelicals. Part of that is because of the influence of dispensational theology, which you can go look up if you're not familiar with that. And some of it may have to do with sort of the political alliance that exists between the United States and Israel. Regardless of which, clear-thinking Christians must recognize that this is not good thinking, right? The idea that somebody who is an Orthodox Jew could worship God while rejecting Christ openly is not something that can be biblically understood. And all we have to do is just take a look at a couple of scriptures here to understand that. 1 John chapter 2, the Apostle John writes these words, "No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever confesses the Son has the Father also. Let what you heard from the beginning abide in you. If what you heard from the beginning abides in you, then you too will abide in the Son and in the Father." You see, there's a very clear connection between worshiping the Son, namely Jesus Christ, and our access to the Father. And in the very same letter, John says another thing. He says this, "Whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son of God does not have life." And brothers and sisters, to be an Orthodox Jew is to deny that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. And we can't say that. That doesn't mean we can't be friends with Muslims and Jews. That doesn't mean we can't have neighborhood acquaintances. That doesn't mean we can't have a cordial relationship with folks of other religions. But what it does mean is that when it comes to worship, the sacred act of worshiping God, we cannot affirm that all worship is the same, because it simply isn't. All right. Now that brings us then to the next question in this State of Theology survey that I want to kind of unpack. Statement 7 says this: "True or false? Jesus was a great teacher, but he was not God." Now, in this particular case, there is not a whole lot here that we can pull out that's positive. In many ways, the evangelical world really should be crystal clear about this. But unfortunately, there's not. So let's take a look at our numbers here. 66% of evangelicals disagree with this statement, which is good that a majority, a 2/3 majority here, disagree with this statement. But the fact of the matter is we still have 30% of evangelicals who hold to evangelical beliefs and who are affiliated with evangelical churches believing that Jesus was not God. And we cannot hold to this idea. The Bible is crystal clear about the divinity of Jesus Christ. Now, I know there's a lot of things to sort out about how he can be both human and God. I get that there's a lot of deep theology here. But Jesus himself made it very clear that he was, in fact, God himself. In John chapter 8, he says this right here. The Jews are arguing with Jesus, and in verse 58 of John chapter 8, he says this: "Jesus said to them, 'Truly, truly, I say to you, prin Avraham yeneste, ego imi.' Before Abraham was born, I am." Now here's the kicker. Look what the Jews do in response to that statement. "So they picked up stones to throw at him. But Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple." See, he said the phrase, ego eimi, I am. And for those of you who know anything about the name of God, Yahweh, then you understand that Jesus there was claiming to be the great I am, Yahweh, God himself. And he even said the phrase, before Abraham was born, I am. And we see very clearly here that the Jews know exactly what he's claiming. That's why they picked up stones to stone him. They saw it as blasphemous. And so even Jesus' own words here are crystal clear about who he believed he was. Paul makes it very clear in Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 to 20, one of the greatest passages in all of the New Testament, extolling the divinity of Jesus. And he says this: Jesus is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him, and he is before all things. And in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him, here's the key phrase, in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. We simply cannot hold to this idea that Jesus is not divine. The New Testament makes no sense otherwise. And the Apostle John does the same thing. John 1, verses 1 through 3 says this: In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And brothers and sisters, the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that has been made. Listen, this is crucial for us, right? A lot of times folks wonder about all these little theological debates. Well, maybe Jesus is a man, or maybe he's a God, or maybe he's some kind of demigod or something like that. No, here's why this matters. If Jesus was merely a good teacher, but he was not God, we can gain wisdom from him all day long, yes and amen, but what he can't do is save us. If he was not divine, he is worthless as a savior. But brothers and sisters, that's not the case. The good news is that God himself became human, and because of that, we can place our faith in his work and then have hope and be saved. That's why this matters. Now, I do want to close with one thing here to try to get you to realize that the position that Jesus is a good teacher, but he's not God, is also logically incoherent. And I would love to sit here and lay this case out for you, but C.S. Lewis does it far better than me. So I want to close with just a passage from C.S. Lewis in the book Mere Christianity. C.S. Lewis says this: I am trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level with the man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. That's exactly right, brothers and sisters. Jesus is not a great moral teacher. He is God. It's so incumbent upon us and the evangelical community to make that clear. All right, I hope you have been blessed by this. We are going to, again, attack this next week and look at a couple of more. Until then, go and be blessed.